Hey friends, I'm Stacy and this is Gorgeously Aging, and today we're going to talk about forehead Botox and what you should know before you get treatments in your forehead. Even if you've had treatments before, likely they are going to change over time and you're going to need to add tox to some areas and do less in the forehead. There are definitely some super important things to consider, especially if you go in for treatments and you're on autopilot and you just do the same thing over and over. This is something to consider before your next appointment. For those of you brand new, I am a 53-year-old master medical esthetician, and I am passionate about all things skincare, facial rejuvenation, makeup, fashion, and aging beautifully from the inside out. So let's get into the pros and cons of forehead Botox and what you really need to consider, especially if you have hooded eyelids or starting to have heavy, droopy eyebrows. As you can see, I have a pretty big frontalis or forehead muscle. So let's just talk about that muscle and its importance and what it actually does. So the forehead is an elevating muscle that raises up. Now I have a pretty heavy or pretty aggressive tox treatment in my forehead. You can see it is completely smooth, and that is the extent of the movement that I have. So you can see I have little to no movement in the forehead or frontalis muscle. So throughout this video, I am going to insert some videos and photos just to show you so you have a better visual reference of some of the problems that you can run into with forehead Botox and some of the decisions that you have to make, because it's almost like you can't have everything, and I'll explain what I mean. So I always treat my forehead so that I can still raise the lateral part of my brow. In this last treatment, I had some dreaded Wi-Fi lines. These are the little lines that kind of go around this part of the brow, because I always leave some movement here. So typically that is my preference, but I kept looking at those Wi-Fi lines thinking I really want to knock those out and have my forehead be completely smooth. So now I knew if I did that, if I knocked out those Wi-Fi lines that ran right here, that this would not raise, and that in effect took my brow from being like this and my eyelid space being more substantial to my brows being more flat and my eyelid space being less. So it's a decision, and as we age, we need to adjust that because our eyes change so much and so many of us start developing hooded eyes. If we treat the frontalis more centrally, we knock out the wrinkles in the middle, and if we leave this lateral part untreated, we have eyebrow raise and it can give us a brow lift. But we can also have those wrinkles that come along with this movement. So it becomes an important decision. Do I want a completely smooth forehead, or do I still want to move the lateral part of my brow to give a brow lift? Now there's another muscle that comes into play here too, and that is the orbicularis oculi around the eye. So where the frontalis is an elevating muscle, the orbicularis oculi is a sphincter, a circular muscle that goes all the way around the eye, and it allows us to squint. Sometimes if that muscle is strong, we always kind of have a heavy brow or a heavy eyelid. By relaxing that sphincter muscle with tox treatments around the eye, it also opens up the eye a bit more and gives the brow lift. So there are two ways for brow lift. One is by not relaxing the lateral part of the frontalis, which is an elevating muscle, and the other is by treating around the outside of the orbicularis oculi, which also lifts the brow. In essence, with that sphincter muscle around the eye, it takes it from being slightly squeezed to being relaxed and open. Now, I wish I could have the best of both worlds, a super smooth, youthful forehead and a brow that lifts up like this. And I really had to treat those Wi-Fi lines just to decide for myself which way I want to go. Do I want a super smooth forehead? And am I okay with the brows being a little lower, a little straighter? Or do I want that brow lift? And my personal preference is that I'd rather deal with a little bit of lines on the lateral part of my forehead, those Wi-Fi lines or ladder lines, and still have a lifted brow. For me, that is my personal preference, but I kind of had to do that more aggressive treatment, treating the Wi-Fi lines and seeing for myself which way I wanted to go. Would I love to have a completely smooth forehead? Absolutely, but I'm not going to do it sacrificing that brow lift. Let me tell you, like, it makes such a difference because the skin here is a little looser now, or a little heavier. because this isn't pulled up. And it even affects the way I put my eyeshadow on. So I don't hate it. I'm not mad at it. I'm glad that I did a more aggressive forehead treatment. I'm glad that I wiped out those Wi-Fi lines, because in the end, it made it clear to me how important it is that I maintain this brow lift. As a consumer, I think it's really important to know more about these treatments and the anatomy and how it works so that you can better prepare yourself for your visits and get the results that you need. You can find my free advanced facial rejuvenation education at rumble.com/gorgeouslyaging. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you in my next video.